Do you remember one of Radio Shack's slogans? Used to be, "You've got questions, we've got answers," which is a good thing for an agnostic and a Catholic looking for meaning in life. You see, starting out, my wife Debbie and I had a business plan and a family plan. I worked at a local Radio Shack store training to become a store manager. We had 2 kids, and I managed my first store in the Park Lane Shopping Mall on Spring Garden Road in Halifax. Debbie worked for Shoppers Drug Mart. We would alternate days off for taking care of the kids, or we had to find a babysitter. We were both making a decent wage, but we were still financially and quality time impoverished. We struggled with trying to make a difference for our kids and ourselves, and we failed miserably. It was during this time of struggling that I tried to find meaning and comfort in the Bible, the New Testament to be exact, a little red Gideon's book I had been given as a child, which had helped me during some dark times in my life previous to that, while I was attending vocational school. Debbie and I were dating back then, and we had broken up because of distance and life direction. I had found comfort in God's word, but still remained distant with God, not really understanding what I was reading. When I picked up the Bible again during this difficult time we were going through, I was trying to find balance in both our family and finance. I was looking for hope and meaning and answers. I had a conversation with God, which I basically remember went, if you were real, the only way I was going to believe is if I could talk to the carpenter. In my mind, nothing else would suffice. I had to talk to the carpenter. I had very little trust in clergy, ministers, nuns, you name it. During this time, I had changed stores and locations. I went from Park Lane to Downsview Shopping Center and finally ended up in the Dartmouth Shopping Center. These were all demotions, and I was going from bad to worse. And coincidentally, so was Radio Shack as a company. While working at the Dartmouth location, I became quite jaded with people. I saw almost every customer as a shoplifter, which pretty much described the whole Dartmouth shopping mall experience. I worked alone in the store because we weren't making enough money to hire an employee. I ate lunch in the store while I worked, and if I wanted coffee or a bathroom break, I'd have to close up. It was during one of these times that I needed a coffee that Paul happened to walk into my store. I was both irritated and short with him. I asked him point blank if he was interested in buying something, and he just said he was there just browsing. I told him I was not trying to be rude, but I was, and that if he wasn't buying anything, I needed him to leave so I could close up to go get a coffee. He then offered to get me one, which both dumbfounded and confused me. Generally, anyone that happened into my store was either a shoplifter or people just killing time waiting for their next bus. When Paul came back with a coffee, we talked a little, and he noticed a book I had opened on the counter that I had been reading. It was a book on trying to understand the book of Revelation. Paul asked me if I understood what I was reading, and we got into a short discussion on Revelation and the Bible. It wasn't long after our initial introduction that I learned he was a carpenter, which astounded me and piqued my interest because of the prayer and conversation I had with God previous. I had asked to speak to the carpenter, and God sent a carpenter. You might call it an interesting coincidence, but I thought it deserved more investigation. Paul invited me to church one Sunday, and when I arrived, I was taken aback by the welcoming atmosphere there. But what really grabbed my attention was the pastor preached a message from the book of Revelation. I had been to a few church services over the years, and I don't remember ever hearing anyone talk or preach from the book of Revelation. When I did go to church, it was mostly because my good friend and also my wife, then girlfriend, were both Catholic. For my friend, it was more about hanging out with him, and later for my wife, it was more about trying to be on the good side of her mother. We were eventually married in a Catholic church, but when the minister asked if I was converting to Catholicism, I said, hell no. He then informed me he couldn't give us a full Catholic wedding, to which I responded, "That's okay with me. A shorter ceremony would be good." Soon after hearing the sermon at Paul's church, I started attending the church and tithing. And it was to my wife's horror, she told me later that she thought I had joined a cult. It wasn't long after that we decided to move back to our hometown and started attending church there. I was baptized shortly after returning home, and Deb was baptized not too long afterwards. God has been faithful over these many years. We still struggle financially, but He always has provided for our needs. We have 5 awesome kids and soon to be 10 completely awesome grandkids. Our quiver is overflowing, and we are extremely blessed. I'd like to thank the Lord for using Paul for his obedience to God, for the gift of kindness and a cup of coffee at just the right time. Thank you, Paul. God took our mess and turned it into a miracle of His grace. So remember, you got questions, He's got answers.